All right, let's dive into this. You sent us this YouTube transcript all about Michel Fourniret, the ogre of the Ardennes. And yeah, I gotta say, you're not alone in being completely captivated by this case. Just the sheer number of crimes he admitted to is mind-blowing. And then, of course, you've got the added layer of his wife, Monique Olivier. So we've got this YouTube transcript to work with, and that's going to be our focus for this deep dive. So to kick things off, let's go back to the beginning. The transcript kind of paints this picture of Fourniret as just a regular guy, a worker, family man, almost blending into the background.
Yeah, and that's honestly one of the most unsettling things about cases like this. It's what criminologists call the banality of evil. This idea that people who commit these horrific acts can seem totally ordinary. And the transcript definitely highlights that weird contrast with Fourniret.
Oh, absolutely. But underneath it all, there was this dark obsession with virginity. The transcript mentions it all started on his wedding night when he felt betrayed by his wife. What kind of psychological impact can something like that have?
Well, early trauma, especially in intimate relationships, can have a huge impact on someone's psychological development. And in cases like Fourniret's, it can really warp their perception of power, intimacy, and control. So it's not uncommon for these individuals to try and exert control over others, especially when it comes to sex, as a way to compensate for those feelings of vulnerability and powerlessness they carry from their past.
And it doesn't stop there. The transcript mentions multiple marriages and even prison stints. How did those experiences potentially shape his trajectory?
You know, each failed marriage could have reinforced those feelings of rejection and inadequacy he already had, fueling his need for control even more. And prison, well, it's not exactly known for being a nurturing environment. Let's be honest. It often makes existing psychological problems even worse. So for someone like Fourniret, who probably already had a fragile sense of self and a tendency towards violence, prison could have been like a training ground. It might have hardened him, solidified that criminal mindset.
That's a scary thought. And then enter Monique Olivier. Can you believe she actually sought him out through a prison pen pal program? It's like she was drawn to the darkness.
You're right, that's a fascinating piece of this puzzle. It's not every day you hear about women actively looking for relationships with guys like Fourniret, incarcerated sex offenders. It really makes you wonder about her psychological makeup and what would lead someone to connect with a person like that.
And then there are the letters. They spell out this pact, this chilling agreement to find and target young virgins. It's honestly disturbing to even read about. They even use this horrific phrase, membren sur pattes. It's like they were reducing their victims to objects.
Yeah, that dehumanization of their victims is a classic tactic. Predators use it to distance themselves from the emotional and moral weight of what they're doing. And with Fourniret and Olivier, this pact they made through letters, it suggests this shared fantasy, this twisted sense of purpose they found in each other.
All right, so let's break down this pact a bit more. What could their motivations have been?
Well, it's tough to say for sure, but there are a few things that come to mind. Maybe they both felt a sense of power and control in preying on vulnerable people.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was their way of acting out their own messed up desires and fantasies. That language they use, particularly the membrane sur pattes phrase, it points to a deep-seated objectification, a complete disregard for human life. Almost like they were stripping away their victims' humanity to make the crimes easier to stomach themselves.
And then the killing spree begins. The transcript outlines this horrifying series of murders, each one following this chilling pattern. And it looks like Monique was actively involved, luring the victims into their van.
Right. Their MO, as they call it, reveals a really calculated and disturbingly efficient approach. And Olivier's part in all of this is super interesting. She comes across as this harmless woman, so her presence probably disarmed potential victims, made them more likely to fall into their trap.
You know, the YouTube transcript even mentions this one case with Isabelle Laville. She trusted Monique specifically because she was a woman. It just makes you think about how these predators take advantage of our assumptions about safety and trust.
Exactly. They weaponize those societal norms and expectations to get to their victims. In this case, yeah, Olivier being a woman probably played a huge role in making those potential victims let their guard down, allowing Fourniret to stay under the radar.
It's just awful to think about. And then you've got these chilling details in the transcript that make it even more heartbreaking, like the injection marks found on Fabienne Leroy's body.
Those details really underscore the brutality of what happened. Those injection marks, in particular, make you wonder about the level of control and torture Fourniret used on his victims. It's a stark reminder of the depravity that can hide beneath a seemingly ordinary exterior.
And to top it off, they even use their baby as a prop to gain sympathy and disarm potential victims.
It's all part of the plan, right? That tactic just highlights the calculated and manipulative nature of what they were doing. Exploiting those societal expectations of parental love and care, they were able to project this image of normalcy and trustworthiness. It allowed them to operate with impunity.
It's just horrifying. And then, as we go through the transcript, we see a change in Fourniret's approach. He starts acting alone, expands his geographical range, and it seems like he might even be trying to copy other serial killers.
Right, and that shift in his MO could mean a lot of things. It's possible that he was getting overconfident, maybe even feeling invincible after dodging capture for so long. Or it could also point to a growing sense of desperation, a need to up the ante, as the thrill from his earlier crimes started to fade.
So what about Monique during this time? The transcript suggests she wasn't physically present for the crimes, but was aware of what was happening. Does that change her level of responsibility?
That's where things get really complicated, both legally and morally. She might not have been directly involved in the killings during this period, but knowing what Fourniret was doing and continuing to be with him definitely raises questions about her complicity. Was she a willing participant in their shared fantasy? Or was she trapped, a victim of his manipulation and fear? The transcript alone can't give us definitive answers to those questions.
It's disturbing to think about the power dynamics in their relationship. And then there's that chilling quote from Monique where she says she needed Fourniret to hunt twice a year.
Yeah, that's a revealing statement. It suggests that she knew and accepted his predatory nature. Maybe even got some kind of twisted satisfaction or gratification from his crimes, even if she wasn't physically present.
It's almost like she was addicted to the thrill of it all, even from a distance.
That's one way to interpret it. This case really underscores the complexities of human relationships, particularly those formed in the context of criminal activity. It forces us to grapple with difficult questions about culpability, agency, and what evil truly looks like.
And just when you think it can't get any weirder, you have this almost unbelievable story about the Gang de Postige treasure. It's like something straight out of a movie. Fourniret goes from serial killer to some kind of audacious treasure hunter. What can we take away from this part of the story based on the transcript you provided?
Well, it definitely reveals a new side to Fourniret. It suggests that his crimes weren't only about twisted sexual desires, but also about getting rich and a willingness to resort to violence to get what he wanted.
It's like we're seeing another piece of this dark puzzle. He wasn't just a serial killer, he was an opportunist, a thief, someone who would take advantage of any situation if it meant he could benefit.
Exactly. And let's not forget about the murder of Farida Hamish, the woman who helped him find and dig up the treasure.
Right. The transcript implies that he killed her so he could keep all the loot for himself. It just reinforces how ruthless he was, how little he valued human life. But the crazy thing is, this guy managed to stay off the radar for decades. The transcript even mentions he had run-ins with the law, but somehow nothing ever stuck.
It's true. The fact that he could evade capture for so long, even with those encounters with law enforcement, suggests there might have been some serious breakdowns in communication between agencies, both within countries and across borders. This case really exposes the challenges of tracking serial killers, especially when they're operating in multiple jurisdictions.
The transcript mentions this mysteriously clean criminal record, which let him move freely between France and Belgium without raising any red flags.
And that's a crucial detail. It points to potential systemic failures that allowed him to fly under the radar. Maybe there wasn't enough information sharing between countries, or maybe the technology and investigative techniques back then weren't advanced enough to connect the dots.
It's a scary thought that there could be so many other cases out there just waiting to be linked because of similar issues in the system. And then there's Fourniret's personality. The transcript talks about how much he enjoyed these chess games with investigators, even while they were searching for bodies.
That kind of behavior is totally consistent with psychopathic tendencies. These individuals often get a perverse sense of pleasure from manipulating and controlling others, even when they're facing overwhelming evidence.
It's like he was treating the whole thing as a game, using the investigators as pawns in his own twisted world.
Exactly. And the fact that he managed to fool everyone for so long, even the people closest to him, shows just how skilled he was at deception.
So we're starting to get a clearer picture from this transcript. A seemingly normal guy with a dark past, a manipulative personality, and a history of violence. But just when you think it can't get any more complex, Monique Olivier starts confessing.
Right. And the timing of her confessions, along with what she reveals, adds another layer of complexity to this already confusing case. It makes you wonder, why would she break her silence after all this time?
The transcript highlights these bombshells she drops, talking about Marie-Angèle Domès and Joanna Parrish. It even hints that there could be even more victims out there.
Those revelations were huge. They confirmed what a lot of people already suspected, that Fourniret was responsible for even more than he had initially confessed to.
But why confess after all this time? Was it genuine remorse? A play for a lighter sentence? Or maybe even some kind of twisted revenge on Fourniret?
It's really hard to tell from the transcript alone. It could have been any combination of factors, maybe guilt, self-preservation, and even a desire to control the narrative in some way.
It's like a puzzle within a puzzle. And the transcript really captures the frustration of the investigators and the victims' families. They believe Fourniret holds the answers to so many unsolved mysteries.
And that's one of the most tragic things about these cases. The perpetrators often have the answers, those missing pieces, and they may choose to take them to their graves. It leaves behind a legacy of pain and so many unanswered questions.
It's a heavy thought, knowing there could be more victims out there, their stories lost because of Fourniret's silence.
And this is where we run up against the limitations of what we have to work with. The YouTube transcript gives us some valuable clues, but it's just a glimpse into this huge network of events, motivations, and consequences surrounding Fourniret's crimes.
You're right. We have to remember that we're piecing this story together from just one source. The full truth might be far more complex and nuanced than what's captured in this transcript.
Yeah, it's definitely a reminder that even with a lot of information, some truths can stay hidden. But let's not forget what we can learn from the transcript. For example, a trial and what happened afterwards give us some really valuable insights into the legal challenges of dealing with cases like this.
That's a good point. It's not just about understanding Fourniret's mind, right? It's also about understanding the systems that failed to stop him, the legal battles that followed, and the impact it all had on the victims' families. And speaking of the trial, the transcript mentions Fourniret trying to manipulate things, trying to cause more pain for the families even then.
Oh yeah, that's classic narcissistic and psychopathic behavior. They crave control and attention, even when they're being condemned. The trial becomes just another stage for them, another chance to assert their dominance.
It's like he couldn't let go of the need to be the center of attention, even if it meant causing more suffering. And the transcript says he got a life sentence, which was pretty much a given considering what he did. But figuring out Monique Olivier's role, that was a whole other debate.
You hit the nail on the head. Legally speaking, proving an accomplice's guilt is really tricky. Prosecutors have to make a direct connection between what the accomplice did and the perpetrator's crimes. Did she actively participate in the killings? Did she force or manipulate the victims? Or was she under Fourniret's control, like her defense claimed? Those are the tough questions the court had to wrestle with.
It's a total gray area, morally and legally. And this YouTube transcript you gave us really lays bare just how complicated this case is. On the one hand, you have these horrible, meticulously planned and executed acts. And on the other, you have this seemingly normal couple who just blended into the background. It's hard to wrap your head around it.
That duality is exactly what makes this case so fascinating and disturbing. It forces us to face the uncomfortable truth that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, disguised as something ordinary, and that makes it even more insidious.
It's like a warning, reminding us that we never really know what's lurking beneath the surface. But even with all the darkness, the transcript also shows us moments of resilience and determination.
Definitely. The investigators, even with all the setbacks and frustrations they encountered, never gave up on finding justice. Their dedication to the details, analyzing every little clue, ultimately led to Fourniret's capture and conviction.
And let's not forget the victims' families. They fought so hard for answers, for recognition, for some kind of closure. Their strength and courage in the face of such unimaginable loss is truly inspiring.
Absolutely. Their unwavering commitment to their loved ones is a testament to the power of human connection and the importance of honoring those we've lost.
You know, thinking about all those years Fourniret managed to avoid being caught, it makes you wonder about the systemic factors that might have contributed to his elusiveness.
Right, and the transcript touches on that aspect of the case. It raises questions about how law enforcement operates, how agencies communicate with each other, and the challenges of tracking criminals who move across borders.
The transcript specifically mentions his surprisingly clean criminal record, which allowed him to move between France and Belgium without raising any suspicions.
That's a key point. It suggests that there might have been missed opportunities to catch him earlier. Maybe there were communication breakdowns between the French and Belgian authorities, or perhaps the technology and databases they were using back then weren't sophisticated enough to make the connections.
It's unsettling to think that a simple oversight or a lack of coordination could have allowed him to keep committing crimes for so long.
And that really highlights the need for law enforcement agencies to constantly evaluate and improve their practices. Learning from past cases, identifying weaknesses in the system, and adapting procedures and technologies are crucial for tackling the challenges of tracking and catching criminals, especially those who cross borders.
It's like a never-ending race to stay ahead of those who exploit the system. And this case really shows the importance of international cooperation and information sharing.
Absolutely. In today's world, where criminals can move between countries with ease, collaboration between law enforcement agencies is more important than ever. Sharing information, coordinating investigations, and developing standardized procedures can help to close those gaps that allow predators like Fourniret to slip through.
It's a reminder that even in the darkest cases, there are lessons to be learned, systems to be improved, and a shared responsibility to push for justice and accountability.
And just as importantly, I think this case encourages us to think about the human factors involved, the vulnerabilities, the motivations, the choices that shape these events.
You're right. It's not just about the facts and evidence. It's about understanding the human drama unfolding within these tragic stories. And that brings us back to Monique Olivier. Her role in all of this is still a topic of debate and speculation.
Her confessions, which came so late in the game as detailed in the transcript, add a whole new layer of complexity to an already baffling case. It makes you question her motivations, her level of involvement, and the impact her actions had on the investigation and the victims' families.
Was she a willing participant, driven by her own dark desires, or was she a victim of Fourniret's manipulation, trapped in a cycle of fear and control? The transcript gives us glimpses into their relationship, but we may never know the full truth.
That's the frustrating thing about dealing with human memory and perception. The truth is often fragmented, subjective, and influenced by so many things. In Olivier's case, figuring out her true motivations and her role in these crimes might be impossible.
And that lack of clarity, that lack of resolution can be incredibly frustrating, especially for the families who are left searching for answers, seeking closure that they might never find.
That search for answers is a natural human response to trauma and loss. But in cases like this, where the truth is shrouded in mystery and clouded by the complexities of human relationships, finding those answers can be an agonizing and elusive pursuit.
And this YouTube transcript, while offering valuable insights, also shows us the limits of what we know. We're trying to piece together a puzzle with missing pieces, relying on incomplete accounts and subjective interpretations.
That's a really important point. We need to approach these sources with a critical eye, recognizing that they offer a perspective, not necessarily the absolute truth. The full story, with all its nuances and complexities, might be lost to time and circumstance.
It's a reminder that even with the most thorough investigation and the most in-depth analysis, some mysteries may never be fully solved.
And that's where empathy becomes so important. We may never fully grasp the motivations, the choices, the circumstances that led to these horrible events, but we can try to understand the human cost, the ripple effects of these crimes, and the lasting need for healing and justice.
It's about acknowledging the human stories behind the headlines, the victims and their families, the investigators dedicated to uncovering the truth, and the communities forever changed by these tragedies.
And for our listener who specifically requested this deep dive, I hope our exploration has provided not just information, but a deeper understanding of the intricacies of this case and the wider issues it brings to light.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground, from Fourniret's early life and the nature of his crimes, to the failures that allowed him to operate for so long, the legal battles, and the ongoing quest for answers and justice. It's been a deep dive, for sure. And looking at this transcript, it's obvious there's still so many loose ends, so many missing pieces that we might never find.
That's the thing about cases like this. Some secrets stay buried, leaving us with nothing but speculation and questions. But even with what we have, I think this deep dive has really illuminated some key aspects of the story.
I think so too. And for you, listening, I hope this is giving you a much richer picture of Michel Fourniret, one that goes beyond those sensationalized headlines. We've explored the psychology, the systemic breakdowns, and the devastating impact on the victims and their families, all thanks to the details you provided in this YouTube transcript.
And even if we never get all the answers, striving to understand is what matters. It's about learning, improving our systems, and raising awareness about the potential for darkness, even in the most seemingly normal places.
One thing that jumped out at me in the transcript was that period in the early 90s when Fourniret claims to have stopped killing. It's like this strange blank spot in his timeline of terror.
It is, isn't it? Was it a genuine break from his crimes? Maybe a moment of reflection or a brief attempt at living a normal life? Or was it just another calculated move to throw investigators off his trail, create confusion, and distance himself from those earlier crimes? The transcript doesn't really tell us, leaving us to wonder what really went on.
Almost like he was still playing mind games, even after all that time. And with Monique Olivier's leaked confessions, the transcript brings up the possibility of even more victims out there, their stories still hidden.
That's a heavy thought. To think there might be other families out there still looking for answers, still dealing with the unknown, it really highlights how these crimes have a ripple effect, the pain lasting far beyond those directly involved.
It makes you wonder how many other cases might be connected to Fourniret, how many are still shrouded in darkness.
It's a chilling question, but a valid one. Serial killers often operate for years before they're caught, leaving behind a trail of unsolved cases and shattered families. For investigators, trying to connect the dots, bridging those gaps in time and location can be incredibly difficult.
The transcript mentions several times when Fourniret crossed paths with the police but managed to escape. It really emphasizes how important it is to be vigilant, to recognize those warning signs, those subtle clues that something's not right.
Couldn't agree more. Early intervention is key. Recognizing red flags, trusting your gut, and reporting anything suspicious can have a huge impact. It's about creating a culture of awareness where everyone feels empowered to speak up and protect those who are vulnerable.
This has been an incredibly informative deep dive, but I have to admit, it's been pretty emotionally draining too. It's hard to grapple with this kind of darkness and not feel a sense of unease, a sense of vulnerability.
I know exactly what you mean. Cases like this really make you question everything you thought you knew about the world, about human nature, about good and evil. It's only natural to feel shaken, to question your own sense of safety and security.
But we can't forget that we're not helpless. Knowledge is power. Understanding the psychology of these predators, knowing the warning signs, and taking action in our communities can make a real difference.
Yes, absolutely. This deep dive, sparked by your interest in this case and the YouTube transcript you gave us, has given you valuable tools. Now it's about using that knowledge, having those important conversations, and pushing for change.
And maybe most importantly, it's about remembering the victims, saying their names, telling their stories, acknowledging their lives. They deserve to be more than just statistics, more than just footnotes in a true crime story.
Their lives mattered. Their loss is a tragedy. And their stories serve as a powerful reminder of the human cost of these crimes, the lasting impact on families and entire communities.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with this. This case, as complex and disturbing as it is, ultimately reminds us that even in the face of unimaginable evil, there's still hope. There's resilience. And there's this shared responsibility we all have to learn from these tragedies, to improve our systems, and to create a world where these kinds of horrors are less likely to happen.
That's a powerful and hopeful message, a message of action, of a collective commitment to building a safer, more just world.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep working towards a better future.